Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Well, welcome back to the Influential Entrepreneurs podcast. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. Today we have with us Marta Papa, who is the divorce whisperer and a top family law attorney and divorce mediator in St. Louis, Missouri. Marta, welcome to the program.
Oh, it's such a pleasure and privilege to be here, Mike. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Hey, so I'm excited to talk to you because I know you take a really unique approach to your practice. And so before we get into that, I want to ask you, give us a little bit of background on yourself and then what led you to this area of law.
Sure. I started out in litigation. Actually, my first job was as a trial lawyer for United Airlines in Chicago. And after a couple of years of representing the company, I began to see that suing people for the company, including our vendors, people that we had contracts with, particularly pipelines and gas, fuel companies. We might win in court, but we lost them as business associates. They didn't. After you sue somebody, they don't really want to be in contracts with you anymore.
Yep.
And we weren't able to do business with them anymore, and it hurt us as a company. And so I began investigating other ways to resolve disputes besides just suing them in court for violating contracts. And so that investigation while I was in Chicago led me to mediation instead of just litigation, just suing people in court. And that was business mediation, and I took all the business mediation classes I could find, continuing legal education classes in business, and there wasn't anything else except for family mediation. I'm like, well, might as well take that. I might learn some more techniques, and I did, and I was hooked because that's where the rubber met the road. That's where, you were holding families together. It seems so much more important than a contract here or a contract there. It was wow, you were working with families and kids and parents and grandparents, and it seemed like really important work. And so I eventually went into family law, which was not my purpose in law school. That's not what I expected to do, and opened up my own family law firm, and did mediation, family law mediation and litigation, but really specialized in mediation at the very beginning when it was just starting, 25, 30 years ago when it was just starting. And now it's really taken a strong hold. And my personal goal is for mediation, divorce mediation, to become the norm of how people get divorced. That's how much I believe in it. A lot of divorce lawyers don't like it because they only make a fraction of the amount of money getting people divorced using mediation versus litigation, because it's so much faster and they get paid by the hour. And so you don't make that much money doing it. But you do so much good by using mediation. It's so much better for the families, which is better really for the country and the world. It's better for society. So, and we're protecting our children, and then they are our future. So, hopefully we'll get more and more attorneys on board with this.
Well, first of all, I find it so curious that a quote-unquote divorce attorney would use the phrase "hold families together." So that's awesome, and I want to go deeper on that. But it makes me think something about the last point you made, which is, hopefully more attorneys will turn to mediation, and that's a wonderful thing. But have you ever heard the story about I'm sure it's just some little allegory, but Grandpa and his grandson walking down the beach, and they see all these starfish, and he's thousands of them, and he's throwing them back in the ocean, and he goes, Grandpa, what are you doing? He goes, well, these guys washed up on shore, and I'm trying to save this one because he's not going to live out here in the sand. And the grandson goes, well, there's thousands, you're not going to save them all. What does it matter? And he goes, well, this one right here, it matters to this one. This one right here, it matters to this one.
What a lovely story. Yes.
You can't save every single one yourself, but you can make one.
No.
Yeah.
No, but you can. But you can start the saving. Really, you can.
Yes.
You can change the culture, and that's what needs to be done. Instead of, most people see divorce as a war. I mean, look at our movies. War of the Roses, Kramer versus Kramer. Yeah. And that makes good movies. Happy ending movies that, they don't sell in Hollywood. But look at our movies. Divorce is war, and it's not really, or if it is war, it's horrible for about 2 more generations for that family, because those children, if mom and dad are at war and they have children, those children don't feel permission to love both mom and dad. If mom and dad don't like or respect each other, then they don't, in their concrete brains, they don't have permission to like or love both mom and dad. They have to pick one person.
Pick sides.
And the other person slowly evolves out of their life. And because they feel like they're dishonoring one person, it just doesn't make sense to them that they can have their own relationship with mom and dad, and mom and dad's relationship really doesn't have anything to do with their relationship with mom and dad. You don't learn that until later on in life. Kids don't understand that, so they feel like, well, if mom and dad are fighting, I gotta pick somebody to back, and the other person, they're the loser. So that child grows up with just one parent, and they're kind of ostracized from the other parent, and they aren't allowed to go to that other parent's family reunions, and that other parent's brothers and sisters quit being their uncles and aunts and cousins, and they lose out on all that. And it takes about 2 generations for those people to start filtering back into their life. Well, it's not their life, it's 2 generations down the road. And they're like, who was Uncle Joe, and what did he have to do with, great Uncle Joe? What did he have to do with our family? And he just disappeared because mom and dad got divorced and they fought. And it doesn't have to be that way. Mom and dad can get divorced in a way where the children have the right to love and respect both mom and dad, and still have mom and dad's extended families in their lives, and they don't have to pick. And it's mom and dad that have to do the work to keep the family together. And it's the family and the extended family, and it's really up to us professionals to help them figure out how to do that. And can you get totally divorced doing that? Heck yes. Yes, you can. Yeah. You're Jack and Jill, or John and Jane, or John and George. They're just moving. They're changing their relationship. They still have 2 kids. They still have relatives. They still have grandparents and parents. They just aren't going to be husband and wife, or they just aren't going to be spouses anymore, living under the same roof. They're still going to be related, and they're going to be exes, but they're still going to be related, and they're just going to be living in 2 different houses and parenting from 2 different houses. And as professionals, we need, this is a Canadian phrase, by the way, when I studied mediation in Canada, where it really started, in England, in the UK, and Canada is really where it started. So I went to the source to learn once I decided that this is what I was going to do with my life. And the Canadians look at divorce as they just use mediation. It's really hard to even get a trial there. They've fired most of their divorce judges because they don't have divorce trials in most of the provinces in Canada anymore because they all use mediation. It's the norm. And that's what I'm hoping for the United States, because lawyers, financial planners, and social workers in Canada, those three professions, put their arms around people getting divorced and say, we are the professionals that are going to help you decide how to parent your children from two different houses, and allow your children to have a relationship with both of you and not have to pick who's the good guy and who's the bad guy. Help you figure out financially how to move forward into the future and how there's enough money for you both to live apart, and how to divide up your assets in a way that's fair to both of you and is fair in the future. Mm-hmm. And so I can remember going to my first conference in Vancouver, actually. There were a lot of Americans there, and they were asking questions of these Canadians that were on stage giving a presentation, and usually people don't shout questions during a formal presentation. And I remember I was overhearing the Canadians out in the middle of the hotel, and they're saying, "What's with those Americans asking those questions? Like, what do they think this is a war?" And I'm like, "Yes, we do." And they're like, "Don't they see that really what these people need are not two warriors? What these divorcing people need are professionals to put their arms around them and help them move from point A to point B." And
it seems to me that there's a phrase I've heard many times, and it just personifies what you've been saying here. Real is rare. And I think that people that go for, let's just get the biggest thing, the highest fee, the shortest time frame, and in and out and done. But you're taking an approach where you're being really real and transparent and authentic and doing what's best for a family long term, because there's relationships involved, there's kids involved. Even if there aren't kids, there's feelings in relationships. So I just love that approach. And I think personally I've heard the word mediation before, but I never really thought much about what that would mean. So can you think of an example where you've maybe taken a couple or family through this and they came back and said, "Oh my word, I would have never thought that we could have achieved this outcome, and we thought we were ready just to split," and you probably have 1,000 stories like that.
Yes. One of the nuances, when it first happened, it was a nuance, and now I see that it's really a common thing that is repeated in my office, is people will come back, mediation clients will come back 3 or 4 years later and mediate another issue that has come up that was not an issue at the time of the divorce. So they'll mediate whether Joey gets a car on his 16th birthday, who's going to pay for it, who gets the insurance, who pays for the tires, that kind of thing. And then they'll come back 2 years later and say, okay, who's going to pay for college for Joey? And then, okay, who's going to pay for the wedding? So it worked so well the first time around that the next time they come to a big hurdle that they can't come to an agreement on their own, they come back to me. They don't sue each other again. They don't go
because
back
it worked before
again. Pardon me?
Because it worked before, then they're going to go, well, what else can you help us with?
Everybody else goes in and files a motion to modify. They come back to me to change custody, or they come back to me to change child support because somebody's lost a job, or somebody won the lottery, or somebody has gotten sick and they are not making the amount of money they used to make. So it used to be a motion to modify, which typically I charge twice the retainer for a motion to modify than I do for a regular divorce, because that even though there's just one issue on the table, it people are so dug in by the time you get to a motion to modify that nobody will move. And there's only one issue, and it's one coin on the table, and it can't be cut in half, and somebody gets it and somebody doesn't.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like a do or die. Whereas in mediation, in the first mediation, it's sort of like 100-piece puzzle, and I have them put all 100 pieces in that puzzle box, shake it up, throw the puzzle pieces out, and we figure out which puzzle pieces go to spouse A, which puzzle pieces go to spouse B, which ones we're going to give to goodwill, and which ones we're going to throw away. And there's enough ways to move those puzzle pieces around that both parties are happy. And then they don't hold grudges against each other. They aren't mad at each other. They don't turn the 10-year marriage into the 100-year war. And the children have to pay the price for it. And so people come back, and that's one of the rules of mediation is once you mediate with a couple, if you're a lawyer, you can't be a lawyer for either one of them for any other issue in the future. You have to keep yourself as this neutral person so that they can come back to you in the future. And I had one couple come back 5 times to change custody, to change child support, to talk about private school, to talk about cars, to talk about college. They have 5 children. And so they never stepped over the threshold of the courthouse. 5 children, 5 different issues after their original divorce. Neither one of them ever saw a judge.
Wow.
So, those kids have a chance. Those kids have a chance. Otherwise, we'd be sending 5 wounded children out there who have a very wounded and altered impression of what love is and how you express love. And there's something called the sleeper effect for children where they'll usually adjust to the divorce in about 2 years. And their grades go up and they get back involved with things in school, and they seem to be doing pretty well on the outside. They seem to be doing pretty well. But then when they reach the age that they start looking for mates, so high school, college, early 20s, if they had to choose one parent to be the trustworthy parent and the other parent to be the bad parent. One parent's the good guy, the other parent's the bad guy. Let's say they picked mom to be the good guy, then they trust that sex when they're out looking for mates or spouses or dating seriously, and they don't trust the other sex. So let's say it's a heterosexual parenting and they trust mom. Well, they trust women, but they don't trust men. And that's the runaway bride. That's the girl that's engaged 5 times and leaves the altar, but she doesn't understand why. As soon as the guy says, I love you, she runs away, but she doesn't understand why.
Yep.
And you can intervene with that with therapy, but she has to understand that there's something going on, that you can intervene with therapy, and she needs to get to a therapist that understands the sleeper effect, so the therapist can take her back to 6 years old. Here's what happened when you were 6. At 6 years old, you decided men were not trustworthy because you had to. You had to decide either men or women were not trustworthy because it was the only way you could wrap your brain around mom and dad are breaking up. I got to support one and be loyal to one and not be loyal to the other because it's the only way I can handle it. Yeah. And now you're 26 and you can redecide that. You can redecide that. But you need to understand what happened to you and what you did to cope with it. And if you don't deal with it now, you'll never trust men. You'll never have a heterosexual marriage, or maybe it's not even marriage. It's friendships. You'll never. I see it happen I've seen it happen actually in my family in friendships and I tell clients, is that the legacy you want to leave for your children.
Yes.
Do you hate each other so much that you can't do this if it protects your children from only trusting one sex out there in the world? Like they won't have any male friends or they won't have any female friends. They're only going to have half the world that they trust and the other half they don't trust. Is that the kind of world you want to build for your child? And you know you're doing it because I'm telling you you're doing it. And I'm giving you all this material. And I went back, after I mediated for 2 or 3 years, I went back and got a master's in marriage and family therapy at the Menninger Institute, so I could really understand the marital dynamics that were happening at the table that I didn't learn in law school, as you can imagine.
Sure.
And so I have a lot of material from that, and there's constantly more material being written about that and the sleeper effect, and so I really educate my clients, and I'm like, you are deciding their future. You're deciding whether they can trust people. You're deciding, Einstein said, man's biggest decision is whether the world outside that window is safe or not safe. And you're making your 6-year-old decide that right now based on how
Have you ever
treat
heard
yourself.
of the butterfly effect?
Absolutely.
What you're describing here reminds me of the butterfly effect or dominoes. The dominoes.
Yep.
You tip one, and you use the word legacy, which is super important, family legacy.
Yep.
But when you can prevent maybe an ugly divorce and mediate it, even if, I would think hypothetically, even if the mediation ends in the separation, but the fact that it went through this process, you're keeping this domino effect from going negatively. I just think that's so huge.
You're preventing 3 more kids from repeating your mistake.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you're opening up their future to trusting the world, and you're opening up their future to being able to have relationships with both sexes in the future. It's a gift on a silver platter to your children. People say, well, I'm saving for Harvard. I'm like, really? That money's going to be used in a mental institution. It's not going to Harvard.
And, it's like the families that go, oh, well, I'm giving them all the things I didn't have. Well, what they want is your time. They want your attention. And so it's like, you're saving for Harvard, but look at all the other things that are impacting them negatively. That's amazing. I love it. Hey, so tell us about your book, 7 Secrets from the Divorce Whisperer. What's that all about?
Yes. So several years ago, I went through my own divorce, which was a big surprise to me. And I was not prepared for it. Even though I was a divorce lawyer and I knew the law, I was not emotionally prepared for it. And this was back when we used to have bookstores and bookshelves. And I went to Barnes & Noble, and I started scouring the bookshelves and looking for books that would help me with the emotional trauma that I was going through that, as I said, I was not prepared for and didn't expect. And there were religious books there, and there were 12-step books and 10-step books, and there were legal books there. Of course, I already knew all the legal parts of divorce, but there was nothing there for the non-religious emotional part of the divorce that I was suffering. And I just couldn't find anything that could help me. And so I vowed then and there that I wasn't ready to write it then. I needed to go through it and come out the other end okay. But I vowed then and there that I would write that book that was missing from the bookshelves about the emotional impact of divorce that people suffer, and that if you may go through the legal divorce, but if you don't come through the emotional impact of divorce, if you don't come out the other side, if you don't deal with the emotions of the divorce, then you never really get over it. And your life is stifled. Your life is stifled because of that. You've seen those people that are in institutions, or they never have another relationship after that, or they never trust men or women after that. They may or may not pass that on to their kids, but, they don't trust people. The person who 15 years after their divorce, look at a light bulb in the ceiling that's out and say, that GD ex-husband of mine, look at that light bulb's out, that's all his fault. And we're like, you've been divorced for 10 years, and
let it go.
you bet you really need to call GE and not your ex-husband. It's Philip's fault that light bulb is out, not your ex-husband. So they just blame everything, and they haven't gone through the divorce emotionally. And so I wrote a book, 7 Secrets from the Divorce Whisperer, that deals with the emotional part of the divorce, healing from the emotional part, as well as explaining the legal part of the divorce, of what you're going through, kind of the legal process, and mediation, how to use mediation instead of litigation, because mediation takes away a lot of the conflict and a lot of the blame, and that really helps the couple through the emotional growth. It helps them not blame their ex-spouse 10 years later because a light bulb went out.
Yep.
So
well, hey, Marta, let's
all of that.
I just think that I just love your approach so much. I love that you summarize it in a book. Let's wrap up with what's the best way that people could reach out to you, maybe schedule up a call, or even at least pick up a copy of your book.
Oh, yeah, sure. So I have a lawyer website that you can get to on the internet. It's www.consideringdivorce.com, and you can read a lot about mediation versus litigation on there, and the legal process, and my book on there. You can even buy my book on there. And then I have an author website, divorcewhisperer.com, and that's just about the book, and of course you can buy the book on there. And then phone numbers and details of different ways to contact me are on both of those websites.
Excellent. Well, I really enjoyed getting to know you today. Thank you for coming on, and you have such a great approach to your practice. I just love the impact that you're making in families. Thanks again for your time today, Marta.
My pleasure, and thank you for letting me spread the word. I certainly appreciate it.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneurssradio.com.